What are games that you're playing lately, more recently? Something you really loved that you're playing these days?
There was some study I saw recently talking about the psychological benefit or soothing mechanism of replaying games you love.
Yeah.
And sure enough, the still photo on it was a picture of Red Dead Redemption 2, which is my go-to if I'm in between games, or I'm a father of five, so I don't have a ton of time at the moment for me time um, with PlayStation. So I'm usually revisiting Red Dead and just riding around and finding things I had never found before. So there's some, yeah, real nostalgia there. And comfort. It's like a comfort food in a way. I know the story, so I don't. If I'm playing a new game, I get very compulsive. Like I have to know where the story's going.
Yeah.
And some seasons of life and my workload, it's like I cannot start a new game. Like it would not be good.
Mhm.
And now we've introduced Nintendo Switch to our kids, and so Tuesdays and Thursday nights are family Nintendo nights. So Mario
That's great.
Kart, Mario Party. They just got into Smash Brothers recently, and oh man, the laughter that just comes out. And so now it's
Yeah.
this family bonding experience, which has been fun.
No, that's awesome. We've got similar sort of thing for my little girl. She's playing what is she doing? Animal Crossing and Minecraft are her two big things right now. So she's allowed like an hour a day. She gets her schoolwork in, and then weekends are a little more relaxed. But
Yeah.
yeah, for me it was Jedi Survivor. I binged that recently and just loved it. Hogwarts Legacy is another one. It's just beautiful. So for those who haven't yet met Bobby, he's written this book called Gaming and the Heroic Life, and he's also partnered. There it is, gorgeous looking thing. You've also crafted God and Gaming, which is available through. Where is it available? Actually, it's on a couple of different places I was seeing online. Where do you like to refer
Yeah.
to?
That's so the book is Gaming and the Heroic Life with Ave Maria Press that you could find there or on Amazon. And then my friend Father Blake and I did a limited run series on with Word on Fire that's God and Gaming. And that was just a lot of similar themes that we're musing on, where the true good and the beautiful is echoed in video games. And really fun was getting to talk to people in the gaming industry, like a developer at Halo, a music composer, um, and Jonathan Blevins, who streams on Twitch. This spread of people that are Catholics in the industry, and how are they bringing their faith either implicitly or explicitly to their craft. It was great to do that.
So, out of those conversations, what's something that actually surprised you about how they're navigating their faith and they're working in a bunch of secular games, but they're also seeing a ton of value in doing what they're doing over the last year, especially since launching this book? What's something that's really surprised you?
It's a great question. I think just how the Catholic thing, it goes so deep. And there's ways to evangelize, speaking to the heart, speaking for that desire for beauty, the desire to be a hero. That it's like, yeah, we're on board with that. We're recording this on August 14th, which is the feast day of Maximilian Kolbe. And in terms of a man who was heroic, a man who had a lot of suffering, was of a pretty fragile constitution. Like he wasn't a ripped bodybuilder. He was suffered a lot with different health issues, but he gave his life to the Lord. He traveled from Poland to Rome to Japan and back again, and was imprisoned in World War II and sent to the Auschwitz. Yeah, he was at Auschwitz, and gave up his life so that a Jewish man could live. And so that whole like the call to be a hero, it's loud and clear in video games. Like I want to brandish the sword, I want to fight the demon, I want to win all the experience points. Great. And that's very human. And where does that come from? Like God put that there. Christ, that's Christ's call, is to lay down your life and all the way to the final battle. So how we don't need to, come out the gate swinging with scripture. There's times for that though. Like, hey, like depending on, it's always discerning, like who's in front of you, either in real life or across the keyboard. And how is God calling me to witness in this moment?
What are you talk about the heroic life? How would you define the heroic life, because if you go back to the Middle Ages or you drop yourself into a game, heroism in those circumstances is different to how we live it, in the real world. How do you bridge those talking points? Because heroism with a sword is different when it's over coffee.
Sure. What comes to mind is having a backbone, is knowing what you're about. Like, to turn the other cheek means you have a cheek to turn. And like the chivalry code of the knights of old, it's echoed in that desire to be a gentleman, which is gentle, like to be tender, to be mindful of who's in front of you and to take care of those under your tutelage, but then to be a man. And that goes for man or woman. That is to be who God has created you to be. And so sometimes we want to, out of prudence, we're shy to evangelize, we keep certain hot button issues or what we honestly believe close to our heart. And there's also a calling to be bold and just to call a spade sometimes. And the heroic thing is sometimes just not lying, not going along with just to be nice. Like the gospel calls not to be nice. Like that's not out of Jesus's words. It's lay down your life. The seed must die to bear a new fruit. And sometimes that's just getting over our shyness, getting over our that inner critic that could just be like, what do I have to offer the world? This person doesn't want to hear it. Like, we don't know what crosses people are carrying, what they're suffering with. And it may be that the heroic thing is just straight up having the hard conversations, asking people, how are they doing? And actually meaning, like, I'm not just saying, hey, how you doing? And walking on. It's like, how are you doing? And I care enough about you to listen and not just to hear myself talk. So there's like the minor levels of getting over myself. And there's, again, the Maximilian Kolbe, like heroic, like those moments that are clear and loud, but it's a lot of those little silent, hidden heroic moments that lead to you to be able to say yes in those big, over the top, like, how did I get here moments?
Yeah,
like that
20 seconds of insane courage.
Exactly. Like, if you haven't built that up over your lifetime, you're not going to step forward and say, take my life instead. If you haven't built up, like, virtue is a habit. It's not you're awesome once, great, now you're virtuous. It's I am doing the hard thing consistently, which is hard, and to the point it starts to become my character.
Yeah.
Yep.
One thing that I love about games, like we talk about gaming as a form of community building or as a way to connect with people. I love, how do you say this? Evangelization through fandoms. Okay? It's actually a big reason why the Legend Fiction community exists, is because we're either creating brand new worlds or we love connecting with other people around those worlds. And I love seeing how people's eyes light up when you just bring up the name of a movie or a series or a book or a game. What's a game apart from, you said Red Dead Redemption, which I haven't played. I've seen some of the playthroughs for it though. What are some other games that you have absolutely loved, and maybe why?
Chrono Trigger on Super Nintendo is one of those, like, takes me way back. The music is still amazing to this day. Simple story, but amazing how the depth of storytelling was so great in that 16-bit era. And, more so in the 32-bit and then the 64-bit, and then we're at the 1000 whatever bit we are today. And even like the Zelda games, how you have a protagonist who doesn't talk, and how much emotion and how much of the story you can get invested in is pretty amazing. So I've recently played through, and recently in the last couple, like 2-3 years, the new God of War games on PlayStation. And you take a murderous killing machine like Kratos from the other older games to now becoming Father of the Year by this new round. The music is incredible, the graphics, the story, the combat, and very much like a man trying to figure out, how do I be a father?
Yeah.
The first game is a masterpiece, like the new God of War, like revamp, and it's very human, like the progress of this guy that doesn't know how to be a dad and trying to connect with the son, and the death of his wife and his mother. Like, what do we do now? And these outside forces are coming in, like forcing them together to create a bond that goes deeper. And I just was taken like blown away by it. And now playing these games as a dad, it also unlocks a different part of my heart.
Yeah.
Like the protector role that a lot of people instinctively can tap into, whether it's The Last of Us or the BioShock series is a lot of fun too. I love the blend of philosophy and action. And, the second game, which is kind of like, doesn't get as much attention as I think it should, but you play the role of a big daddy who has to rescue this little sister character. And playing that as a dad, it gets very visceral as you're trying to fight off a horde and save your daughter.
Yeah. I think it's cool that you mentioned God of War, because I was watching a playthrough for that. It was the first game where he goes to the Nordic area. I can't remember the name right now. And there was this one moment where he enters into this absolutely gorgeous environment. And I think it's before I can't remember anyway. This has been a year and a half since I watched that playthrough. First of all, I couldn't believe how gorgeous it was, just routinely throughout the whole thing. But then what really just hit home is, for the first time, how gaming is not just something you do to burn off steam and maybe just to sort of be creative with your imagination. It's like, no, it's actually, what is he doing? Is he's progressing through a pantheon, right? But if you sort of step outside some of the common ways that we as Catholics, as Christians, regard a lot of ancient religions, you think of them from spiritual standpoints, you can like archetypal standpoints, metaphorical, psychological, whatever. You then take a character and you progress through a lot of these things. There's actual teaching moments. There's things that are reflections of stuff that we are living through or going through, right? That's why Jordan Peterson's just been incredible with his, the psychology of Genesis. Like, yes, you can read it as historical moments, or you can also read it as psychological, like right now reflections, which opens up entirely new insights into stories of scripture and so on. So to then watch this game and suddenly realize gaming can do exactly the same thing, only you're not just sitting and watching a story. You're kind of living through a learning experience that can teach you things. What comes to your mind is you have probably done that yourself, playing games, and how they can prompt you to think more deeply or maybe even change you.
Yeah, I mentioned the BioShock games, and in BioShock Infinite, there's this meta dialogue happening throughout of the nature of free will. And am I really free if the outcome is determined in a way? And so then the questions of faith, if I believe in a God who is infinite and is forever was, is, and will be, is outside of time, he sees everything, he sees where I'm headed. Am I really free? Like those, I meet people with, and I believe I have the gift of faith. Like I challenge my intellect, but there is definitely a sense of I can let go and just embrace the mystery. And I meet people that struggle with embracing the mystery. Like they need to know, they want to understand in order to believe. And St. Augustine talked about, I think it was Anselm maybe, who said, I believe so that I can understand. And if faith is not this irrational leap, it's just a point where reason hits the ceiling.
Yeah.
And there's got to be trust. And not understanding and not comprehending the whole thing is okay. Like it's the ant trying to figure out the elephant. Like it's never going to fully happen. In our hubris, we think sometimes I've got to figure out God on my terms. And it takes real humility and work and surrendering to say, this is a mystery. And to allow yourself to just be swallowed up by beauty. So these again, I could go for an hour on gaming soundtracks and how they've progressed, and Skyrim to Journey to the God of War to I will hear the Uncharted theme, Nathan Drake and those adventure games. Like I hear the Uncharted theme on the right day at the right time, I'll start tearing up. Like it is so heroic. You hear about like Thumos, just that like energy of I don't know, like masculine, heroic like when the Gladiator theme comes on and you just want to like flip a table. And I mean, you read the comments on YouTube, like under like they'll have like 3-hour just music mixes for people and I do it all the time, just let it go while you're doing work. And the comments underneath like, this soundtrack saved my life, or this soundtrack got me out of such a dark place. So I think that kind of answered your question, but maybe not. I got just how, yeah, it's not just this hack and slash thing, though those exist. It's not just the sport games like Madden and FIFA, all those though exist, those do exist. And some people like games like Fortnite and the massive online games, there's a community, like there's a tribe, and that's an aspect of it's like our generation's bowling league. Like this is where people get together, and it's not just in your neighborhood, it's around the world, and there's a real beauty to that.
Agreed. I hear you with the whole soundtrack thing. Spotify routinely tells me every year, hey, your type is scorecore, right?
Yeah.
It's all. But a lot of these games I've never played, but I'm absolutely in love with their soundtracks. Or if a new movie's coming out or a new game, I'll check out and immerse myself in the music. Journey was stunning. There's a couple of others. Ori is another one, Will o' the Wisp, like that music also just, it's enchanting.
I had pieced out of the Assassin's Creed series for a while.
Okay.
But then I listened to one of the game's soundtracks, and it was like, now I got to play it. And it pulled me back in.
I still haven't played Assassin's Creed, but I saw the one that was set in Egypt, and I just thought, my gosh, this thing is... so this is the fun thing about, in so many ways, about gaming today, right? They're now putting so much effort into the historical detail into it that, I remember it was like local areas are now using these games as like walkthroughs or playthroughs to understand their own history. So much accuracy was put into this stuff, and it's beautiful.
Well, in the Egypt game, and I think they did this in the next one, which is set in ancient Greece, there's a discovery mode option to the game where you can play through the whole map, but the gaming part is turned off. So you pick an avatar, and you can just kind of climb and travel around the map, discovering the landmarks and learning things. I let my daughter play it, and it was really fascinating because it is this. I'm not just reading Rainbow to learn about Egypt. It's
right.
Go run around Egypt, and
what a world! That's just
and there's different stopping points where you go and you can learn about the Sphinx, or you can go learn about the Nile, and it just was like, this is a new era, and this is pretty cool.
That is amazing. That's probably the only reason why I'd want to get like one of those Apple headsets, because I would have experienced that. The other thing so this sort of relates to what we're talking about. I think especially games that have really done well, intentional storylining, that sort of thing, they're a form of Ignatian exercise, right? And I'm probably terrible at all of them, but the little that I know of how the Ignatian exercises work, and I'll maybe ask you to expound on it, is you'll take, for example, like scripture or a moment in the life of Christ or something, and then you try to intentionally immerse yourself in that moment and then engage all of your senses, try to make it feel really, really real. And then, I don't know if there's like a next level to that, but it's where you observe your own reactions to being in that moment and to the words that are being, let's say, communicated to you in that moment. And then you watch yourself maybe to see, how am I reacting? And then decide, do I like that reaction? Do I agree with that? Maybe I need to rethink something and sort of level up myself a little bit, or invite grace to help me change my outlook, or something like this, right? I think gaming is another way that we can accomplish almost the same sort of goal, where you get into a game and you take it really seriously. You're just, for a minute, I'm going to forget my life. I'm going to immerse myself and most of my senses into this situation and pretend I am this person, and then see what I like about it. How do I react by getting into it? And then by the end of the game, you're like in a space of something new or different, and there can be real change and real growth. And if that's the outcome of a game like that, there's no way this is a waste of time. This can be an insanely fruitful, imaginative, musical saga that we can invite people into. What do you think about that? Where would you go with that?
Yeah, I'm nodding along. I'm right there with you. There's also because therein, and I had a friend had a good conversation with his son in light of this book, and it opened up my friend who's a dad, is a little more old school, doesn't like screens, but came around to understanding like what is my son looking for in these video games. And it's not just a total waste of time. And in fact, like there's a book, like if you read a book, it's engaging you in a way where you're having to fill in the whole thing of what does Aragorn look like, and how long is the sword, and then the next thing would be like, well, you're watching a movie, but can be beautiful, and there's a lot of seeds of the gospel that can be there, but it's a very passive thing versus, as you said, in gaming, like you have the control of the character, and that's why the sandbox games are just so much fun, and you lose so many hours because you're just exploring everywhere. And you can do the mission, or you don't need to do the mission. You could just choose to swing around New York for 3 hours of Spider-Man and have a blast. And there is something where it is engaging your senses. It is drawing you in. But I'd say there's also the gradations, and this is where the discernment comes in of, does this game reflect the values I'm looking to echo? Is this game, there's some that would say there's no like neutrality. It's either leading you towards true beauty and goodness, or it's leading you away from it. And we could debate about that. That may be for another episode. But it's the same thing like with books and movies. It's the medium is not the enemy, but it is a discernment. Just like there are crappy books and there are beautiful books, and same with movies. And sometimes the movie is really well made, but there's problematic elements of it. There's a few HBO shows I'm thinking that were great storytelling, but they just had to put explicit sexual content in like every episode, and it was kind of like, this isn't helping me. And the same thing with games. Like not every story is great, and sometimes there's really good stories, but there's problematic content. And so that's where there's a discernment of, can I handle what's being put in front of me? Is it forming me? Is it helping my beliefs, or is it drawing me away? And I'm not a Puritan. Like if anything, I lean towards excess rather than scrupulosity.
We're a lot more like that in legend fiction.
Yeah.
Being able to discern, but still celebrate the good wherever you find it.
Well, and to go into the gray, like Gran Torino, the Clint Eastwood movie, is a beautiful movie of a man who lays down his life at the end of it. There's a lot of vulgarity in that movie. Mm-hmm. Lord of the Rings has violence. And I was talking to a parent about this recently. She was talking about violence in video games. And, well, there's games that glorify violence and gore, and that's just the point. It's just a rampage.
Yeah.
And then there's battles. There's like a Lord of the Rings where there's battles. It's not to glorify violence. It's that good is worth fighting for, and evil has to be taken on head on. So, like,
that right there, I think, is a really, really important point. I think that's actually the whole point of why games exist at all. It's to create these, how do you call them, mental sandbox environments where we go and we test, field test repeatedly, what is an appropriate response to a situation. Like you just said, indiscriminate violence, well, that doesn't help. It doesn't help you. That doesn't help community. That doesn't build up a better future. It doesn't make you a better man. But practicing, like, what is an appropriate response to standing up for the sake of something good. And so, yes, you can couch that in like Lord of the Rings or some of the, whatever the other games are, or Jedi Survive, right, or which I played. And the point is not to glorify, sure, you might enjoy the thrill of being able to defeat your enemies and so on, but what are you doing from an imaginary standpoint, perhaps, is you're field testing what is an appropriate response to facing an evil or a bad situation that will not stand down and will not go away when asked nicely. From that standpoint, I see a lot of gaming as it's a form of active contemplation, form of active meditation on a situation, and then identifying response. And usually, if you can't, if you don't have the appropriate response, you die or got to respawn and try again. I just think of these, like, I love your point of level 3 in your book is about pulling people away from the keyboard back into real life, and it's like, when people would go to monasteries and you'd be an acolyte and you're training and stuff, there's a period of time where you're not really allowed to engage with other people, where you're not formed on the inside. You have to learn to obey a ton. And so you're field testing with your abbot or your discerning guide or something for ages. And you could sort of abstract and think, yeah, this is a game. At what point do I level up? They let me know when I've accomplished something. So that's from a spiritual specialist standpoint, with the same sort of outcome. Okay, now you're ready to actually go and engage with reality. Case in point, like maybe violence. What do you think about this? Violence is one of those necessary evils, right? Where it can't be celebrated of its own, self, but it is something that we have to know how to use appropriately for the right time.
Yeah, and the Catholic Church would call that just war theory, like developing what does it take when all peaceful options have been exhausted. And I love what you said about games as a way of testing. Like, we just finished the summer 2024 Olympics, and isn't that just the jockeying with one another? Isn't that the rubbing up against one another in a battle? Like, you listen to the language the commentators are shouting, and it's a battle, it's a fight to the end. It's whether it's track and field or it's judo or and how games, and this, I start out the book with that, like the philosophical angle of games. Like, we can, like, video games may not be your cup of tea, but to realize, like, to play is something deeply human. And the Olympics, to soccer, to chess, tabletop games, there's something about gaming and play that is so important. And like C.S. Lewis said, that it's useless. But that's the point. It's not supposed to be useful.
Exactly.
Like with art and friendship, they're useless. You could live without it. If you had food and water and shelter, you could live. It wouldn't be a life worth living if that was it. Like, we need the useless things. We need the play. And
I think especially the kinds of games like you're talking about right now, they are more the ones that lean into the masculine spirit. It's the something men are specifically, and a lot of women enjoy this stuff too, but mostly guys, I think that's why we game a ton, not just online, but offline or in person as well. Usually guys getting together, we do something together. Now, either we're gaming in conversation, or we're throwing a ball around, or we're wrestling, or we're playing. It's like we're field testing each other. Can I trust you? How do we match up? And that could be Call of Duty, or that could be, kicking a ball around at a parish picnic, right? But we're field testing each other all the time. How are you going to match up? You're going to fall over? You're going to stand up? We're in a situation where we need a first responder response to a problem, because there are bad actors on the subway, wherever. And I trust that we're going to have each other's back, and we're going to take care of each other, take care of, Now, pivot a little bit. I'm just curious. We've got what I'm also seeing is a delightful rise in a whole lot of cozy gaming, which is this completely non-aggressive,
like therapeutic, safe.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I'm fascinated by this. My wife plays it all day long. So does my little girl. She does Disney Dreamlight Valley and Palia. I'll routinely get in there and play Palia and like mind stuff. I find it so calming and meditative. Like, I struggle with ADHD a bunch, and often getting in there just playing, it's this beautiful world. The number of thoughts that will emerge, because it's a way you can sort of detach your body and sort of free up your mind for a minute. Now, you could do this cross-legged, or sitting in adoration, and that's one way to do it. Another way is to maybe read a story, watch a movie, or actually engage in a game where your mind is still able to observe and be active while your body is doing something different. And you can fill yourself with something beautiful that's relaxing, that's also contributing to community and meeting people and stuff. What do you think about, have you done any cozy gaming in that sense? What do you think about the future of games, with more of that now being included and more people now getting into playing gaming like that?
I mean, I'm all for it. And I think it speaks to how stressed and anxious our generation is. Like, the rise of adult coloring books is also, I think, a consequence of this. People are overloaded. People feel constantly in the doing mode and don't know how to get into the being mode, that of just being receptive and just being. And so you've got this explosion of ways that adults are trying to de-stress. And yeah, these very simple like Stardew Valley and Animal Crossing and the Disney version of it now that's like, it's just kind of, it's downshifting. And I'm a bit more old school. Like I wanted an adventure game. Like if I have any window to game at all,
Yeah.
I'm going on an adventure. I'm Bilbo jumping over the fence. But I understand, and I'm sure it's coming at some point for my own kids getting into some of these more meditative games. And I just thought of like Tolkien and that call, as he saw it, to be sub-creators. Like I'm not creating from nothing. Only God can do that. But I am using the words on the page. I'm using my imagination. I am with these things creating a story alongside God, who is the ultimate storyteller. And so too, it's some of these games, the story is very simple, but that doesn't mean it's not meaningful, and I don't get invested in it, and it doesn't enrich my life in a way. Like even people who say, "Oh, I don't game," it's like, well, is Candy Crush on your phone? Like there's the time wasters, there's the I'm in line, I'm on the subway, and I just need something to distract me.
Well, hey, do you run a business? Are you an entrepreneur? Okay, that's a cultural game. Like, come on. You make progress over last year on whatever, that's another game. It's just a different attitude about it.
Oh, yeah. And that's the philosophy of like extrapolating. It's all a game in a way. And one of the guys I had interviewed for the Gaming and the Heroic, like Dr. Castronova, who I'm blanking on the name of his book. It's a great book. But he talked about quests, and we need quests. And a mankind without a quest is lost and without purpose. In the Christian life, we call that vocation. What is God calling you to do? How is God calling you to evangelize? In the digital space we have now, also offline, and having one foot in this brave new world of technology and another foot grounded in your local 5-mile radius. We all need a quest.
That's awesome. How have you ever thought of making a game yourself?
Oh, I was on a coding, like learn to code program with my oldest daughter for a little while. She ran out of steam with it, and I think just with the limited time I have here on Earth, let me
redirect the question. Not like actually physically get in there and code it yourself. Like you could make a game and have a team of people to help you ideate and develop it. Like, have you ever thought of what you would build or what it would be like?
No, you're the first person to ever ask me that question. So if I do, I'll come back around to thank you. This is the seed. I did. This was fun. I got to be a consult on, there was an Australian company that developed on Roblox this digital like chapel space that was partnered with Father Rob Galea.
Oh, cool.
And I'll send you the link to it afterwards. I'm blank. It's been a while since I hopped on it. But you're interacting with the different saints as you go enter this chapel, and they're taking you through just the different facets of the gospel. And so the goal of it was, let's create a digital church space and maybe even reach the unbaptized, unevangelized, and give them the nuts and bolts of what does it mean to be a Christian and introduce them to some saints. And so I guess I'll claim I'm a game developer. Big asterisk.
That is cool. Is it Bloxburg with the Saint Chapelle? I think I'm just Googling it quickly. So
no,
included in the description.
Yeah. Let me look it up and get back to you. It's been a few months since I was on it.
So what's starting to wrap, because our community is primarily creators and authors and people who love fiction. There's a number of us in here who absolutely love games, and some of us would love to create fiction and create stories for gaming, that sort of thing. Gosh, I would love to, if I could, LegendFiction would sort of lead into or someday create like we would pre-release, what do you call it? Release games, create titles, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Because in many ways, a game it's a story where you have some control over the narrative. You play through to not just be, I think you said earlier, you're not just passively receiving something, You are actively paying attention and working your way through something, which is a very different way to learn. And I think that gaming has reached a point now where we can finally do that really well and immerse you into something where you don't lose your concentration, you don't get distracted. You can enchant people, which is the same thing. Especially today, as you just mentioned, we're so frazzled and we're so tied up in everything that the world wants our attention for. Gaming is an opportunity to completely detach and disconnect from it all and enter into a meditative state. I see that as an insanely helpful and good thing. Now, I would say the next step would be now do it without a game and then continue to develop that into prayer. But if somebody isn't even ready for that, then just start with something like Journey or Abzu, right? I couldn't get over how amazing the experience of just playing that game, how meditative it was. Simple story, but then just these gentle routine patterns. And you can feel your brain rewiring as it's just being in this space that's just so much more calm and in many ways so much more human. What would your advice or recommendations be to people who love everything that's been chatted about here, are intrigued by your book? Actually, let's start there. Where can people get a copy of your book and where can they follow you online?
Gaming and the Heroic Life, A Quest for Holiness in the Virtual World with Ave Maria Press or Amazon. I'm on Instagram at bobby.angel. My wife and I have a website, jackieandbobby.com, where it's different blogs and videos in our speaking ministry. And you had asked like what advice would I give or what appeal? I would say we need you storytellers more than ever. The games I go back and replay, they're fun to play, like the mechanics, the combat, but it's the story. It's like, I want to revisit this story again, whether it's an indie game or a AAA game. And I just finished this book, this 800-page behemoth, Island of the World by Michael O'Brien, who's a Canadian author. He wrote Father Elijah and a number of other books. But I just was left so moved by the story of this character and was like, man, like the power of fiction. I love theology and philosophy, but Jesus spoke in parables for a reason. He knew like story matters. Like the biblical adventure, it's a story. And most people give up on the Bible because they don't understand like what's the story about. Like I can't see the bigger picture of the story. And so we need authors, we need storytellers, we need artists now more than ever. And John Paul II even wrote like a letter to artists, noting that like the beautiful is such an echo of God. And we need artists who aren't just interested in ugly shock, just calling anything art. Like we're moved by authentic beauty.
I love your point right there about the power of fiction and how an incredible novel, when you go and you read it, you're entering into and becoming that character for the space. You stop being you, and if it's done really well, you become that character. Same thing with like a movie. And what I think is just so much uniquely powerful about gaming is gaming takes the center of attention from pretending to be somebody else, actually being you, in a way that's even more visceral and even more intuitive and direct, and then field testing you in a situation. And then I think there's an opportunity then for you to actually own the outcomes instead of being told or led through the outcomes, which is what fiction can do. For me, that's what's insanely compelling about good gaming. And so I would love for those people who enjoy gaming, who want to create those kinds of stories and network with other people who want to do this sort of thing, grab a copy of Bobby's book. I'll include a link in the description. You can come hang out in LegendFiction, which is a community for all of this sort of thing. We're all nerds, massive nerds in there. And then from the point of view of just being a human being, gaming and fandoms are, as far as I'm concerned, fastest and friendliest way to make a human connection with anybody.